Welcome to this explainer. Today, we've got an absolutely wild historical paradox to unpack. We are tracing the footsteps of the legendary Moroccan explorer and scholar Ibn Battuta. Between 1325 and 1354, this guy managed to travel seamlessly across a 14th century world that was, quite frankly, deeply fractured. I mean, think about that for a second, going from North Africa literally all the way to China, without any of the friction we'd associate with global travel today. Oh, and real quick, as we trace his footsteps today, you'll notice we aren't using any drawings or artistic depictions of people, out of respect for the historical and cultural context of the Islamic history we're exploring. But trust me, the facts alone are more than enough to blow your mind. Let's get right into it. So, here is our travel itinerary for today. We're going to start by looking at the fragmented Muslim world. Then we'll examine his ultimate global resume, uncover the secret to his success in unity beyond borders, and finally wrap up with the final legacy.
Okay, part 1, the fragmented Muslim world. Let's dive into this.
To truly appreciate what Ibn Battuta pulled off, you really have to picture the geopolitical map he stepped into. Politically, it was kind of a mess. The Muslim world was heavily fragmented, split into all these completely separate sultanates and emirates. The Abbasid caliphs over in Cairo were essentially just figureheads at this point. You had the Marinid dynasty in Morocco, the Emirate of Granada, the Delhi Sultanate in India. It was a highly fractured puzzle. But, and here's the crazy part, the cultural reality for Ibn Battuta was entirely different. Despite all those shifting borders and self-appointed rulers, his travel was basically friction-free. No modern passports, no pulling your hair out over visa applications. He was welcomed and honored everywhere, simply as a traveling scholar.
Which brings us to part 2, the ultimate global resume.
I want you to just picture the sheer scale of this timeline. He didn't just sightsee, he worked. From 1325 to 1332, he's traveling the Middle East, studying in Mecca, Cairo, and Damascus. Then, boom, 1333 to 1340, he's fully embedded in the Delhi Sultanate in India. From 1340 to 1344, he's island hopping through the Maldives and Sri Lanka. By 1345, he's navigating Southeast Asia to reach China, and finally, rounding out the early 1350s, he makes his way back through Morocco and down into the Mali Empire in West Africa. It's just a staggering, chronological world tour.
Now, what's really interesting about this is exactly how his specialized education translated into immediate high-level employment. Ibn Battuta was frequently appointed as a qadi, which is basically a judge who enforces Islamic law. Because the legal and religious frameworks were remarkably consistent across these wildly different geographical regions, this Moroccan traveler possessed the exact universal skill set required to suddenly sit as a functioning judge in India and later the Maldives. Basically, his education was a globally accepted currency.
And this brilliantly illustrates his professional adaptability. He starts out as a pilgrim and student, just building his reputation. Then he's a judge in Delhi. In the Maldives, he actually gets elevated to chief judge. In Sri Lanka, he's hosted as a highly respected religious guest. When he heads toward China, he acts as an ambassador and diplomat. And in Mali, he serves as a top advisor. He was the ultimate versatile professional, stepping into these top-tier governmental roles in states where he wasn't even a local citizen.
And keep in mind, these weren't just honorary pat-on-the-back titles. He was deep in the trenches of local governance. In Delhi, he was appointed directly by Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq, navigating some seriously complex court politics for years. In the Maldives, as chief judge, the historical sources note that he actually clashed heavily with local customs while trying to strictly enforce the law. He definitely wasn't afraid to assert his authority. He was even trusted enough by the Sultan of Delhi to lead a high-stakes diplomatic mission all the way to the Mongol Yuan dynasty in China. And later, in West Africa, he's right there acting as an advisor to the incredibly wealthy Mansa Suleiman in Mali.
All right, let's look at part 3, unity beyond borders.
So how did a foreigner manage to secure such prestigious positions over and over again? Well, the crucial point comes down to this core concept right here. As long as the underlying principle upon which the emirates and sultanates are based is the Islamic Aqidah, meaning the core Islamic creed and belief system, then even with self-appointed rulers in different states, there is still a powerful level of unity and cooperation. This right here is the foundational thesis of his entire journey. Shared core beliefs created a functionally unified society even when the political map was entirely fractured.
Because of those shared underlying principles, Ibn Battuta was honored universally. The concept of local citizenship simply didn't apply to him the way it dictates our lives today.
Think about it. In our modern era, your passport dictates absolutely everything. Where you can go, how long you can stay, if you can legally work. But for Ibn Battuta, his knowledge and his adherence to a shared cultural framework served as his universal passport, granting him access to the highest echelons of power, from West Africa to East Asia.
Which brings us to our final section, the final legacy.
30. I really want to emphasize this number. 30 years. That is the sheer scale of his expedition. He spent roughly 3 continuous decades exploring the world. To put that in perspective, he left his home in Morocco as a young student in his early 20s, and he didn't permanently settle down again until he was in his 50s. He literally saw more of the world than almost any other human being alive at the time.
Let's move to how this all builds into the historical record we actually rely on today. So he finally returns home to Morocco in 1354. Word of his insane travels reaches the Sultan, who officially requests his memoirs. Ibn Battuta sits down in the city of Fez and spends months dictating his 30 years of experiences to a scholar named Ibn Juzay. And finally, this massive oral dictation is compiled and published as the famous text Rihla, which translates simply to The Journey.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought to close out our explainer. Ibn Battuta's story proves that deeply held, shared values can completely override fractured political boundaries. So I leave you with this. If a 14th century traveler could seamlessly cross a divided world because of a unifying cultural and legal framework, what are the cultural unifiers that transcend our rigid modern borders today? What shared beliefs still give us a borderless world? Thank you so much for exploring with me today.